Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are exploring Unfuck Your Body by Dr. Faith Harper, and I'm so excited to discuss this with you.
Yeah, it's a really great book. I think
Yeah.
it's a book that everybody should read at least once.
It really digs into this fascinating connection between our brains and our bodies.
Exactly. It's not just about treating the symptoms that we're experiencing, but really understanding the root causes of illness.
And some of those causes are surprising, like trauma, inflammation, and stress.
Yeah, those are really big ones. And Dr. Harper does a great job of explaining how those things can manifest in our bodies.
And throughout this deep dive, we'll be highlighting some of the most interesting points from the book, like the role of the vagus nerve, how trauma can physically impact us, and techniques to reclaim our health.
Exactly. And those techniques can be really simple things that we can incorporate into our daily lives to improve our well-being.
So let's start by talking about this vagus nerve. What is it, and why is it so important?
Okay, so the vagus nerve is like this long nerve that runs from your brain all the way down to your abdomen, and it connects to a lot of your major organs, like your heart, your lungs, your digestive system.
Wow, so it's like a superhighway of information between the brain and the body.
Exactly, and it plays a huge role in regulating things like your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, and even your mood.
So when people talk about the gut-brain connection, the vagus nerve is a big part of that.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. So what's happening in your gut can affect your brain and vice versa.
That makes so much sense. Because like when I'm stressed, I always feel it in my stomach.
Exactly. That's your vagus nerve sending signals that something's not right.
So this vagus nerve is a pretty powerful player in our overall health.
Absolutely. And Dr. Harper emphasizes how important it is to take care of our vagus nerve.
And how do we do that?
Well, there are a few things we can do, like practicing mindfulness, deep breathing exercises, yoga, and even just spending time in nature.
All those things sound good for you anyway.
They are, and they can have a really positive impact on your vagus nerve function.
So let's move on to talking about trauma. Now, when most people think of trauma, they think of something really big and scary, like a car accident or a natural disaster.
Right, but trauma can actually be anything that overwhelms your nervous system's ability to cope.
So it could be something like emotional abuse or neglect or even just chronic stress.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that trauma doesn't just affect you mentally and emotionally, it also affects you physically.
Now, how does that work?
Well, Dr. Harper talks about how when we experience trauma, our bodies go into survival mode. This is like the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Right, everybody's heard of fight or flight, but what's this freeze response?
So freeze is kind of like playing dead. It's your body's way of trying to protect you when fighting or fleeing isn't an option.
So you're just shutting down completely.
Yeah, your heart rate slows down, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up. You might feel numb or disconnected from your surroundings.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be. And the problem is that even after the traumatic event is over, your body can get stuck in the survival mode.
So you're constantly on high alert, even when there's no real danger.
Exactly. And this can lead to all sorts of problems like anxiety, insomnia, chronic pain, digestive issues, and even weakened immunity.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like your body is constantly bracing itself for another attack.
Exactly. And it can be really exhausting.
So what can people do if they're struggling with the effects of trauma?
Well, there are a lot of different therapies and treatments available, but one of the things Dr. Harper emphasizes is the importance of connecting with your body.
Now, what does that mean?
It means paying attention to your physical sensations and learning to regulate your nervous system.
And how do you do that?
There are a lot of different techniques you can try, like mindfulness meditation, yoga breathwork, and even just gentle movement.
Those are all those things we were talking about that help with the vagus nerve, too.
Exactly. It's all connected.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah.
I never realized how much our physical health was tied to our emotional well-being.
It's pretty amazing, and I think it's something that's often overlooked.
So this concept of the freeze response is something that Dr. Harper spends quite a bit of time on. And she talks about how it's often overlooked because it's not as dramatic as the fight or flight response.
Right. It's more subtle, but it can be just as damaging in the long run.
And she gives some great examples of how the freeze response can show up in our daily lives.
Yeah, like feeling paralyzed when you have to make a decision or feeling disconnected from your emotions.
It's like your body is just shutting down to protect itself.
Exactly. And it can be really hard to break out of that pattern.
But she does offer some hope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She talks about how with the right tools and support, you can start to heal from trauma and reclaim your life.
Now, Dr. Harper talks a lot about something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Can you explain what those are?
Sure. ACEs are basically traumatic events that happen to children before the age of 18.
So things like abuse, neglect witnessing domestic violence or having a parent with a mental illness or substance abuse problem.
Exactly. And what's really shocking is how common ACEs are. Yeah, studies have shown that about 2/3 of adults have experienced at least one ACE.
Wow, that's a lot higher than I would have thought.
And the more ACEs you have, the greater your risk for all sorts of health problems later in life.
Like what?
Well, everything from heart disease and cancer to depression and addiction.
So it's like these early experiences can have a ripple effect that lasts throughout your entire life.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to address trauma early on.
But even if you've had a lot of ACEs, doesn't mean you're doomed.
No, not at all. There's always hope for healing.
Now, Dr. Harper talks about how trauma can manifest in three main ways: arousal avoidance and intrusion. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. So arousal is basically when your nervous system is stuck in overdrive. You're constantly on edge, easily startled, and you might have trouble sleeping.
Okay, and what about avoidance?
Avoidance is when you try to avoid anything that might trigger memories of the trauma. So you might avoid certain places, people, or even thoughts and feelings.
And intrusion.
Intrusion is when you have unwanted thoughts, memories, or flashbacks of the trauma. You might have nightmares or feel like you're reliving the event over and over again.
Those all sound really difficult to deal with.
They can be, but the good news is that there are effective treatments available.
So if you're struggling with any of these symptoms, it's important to reach out for help.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don't suffer in silence. There's no shame in asking for support.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I'm already starting to understand myself and my own body better.
Me too. I think Dr. Harper does an amazing job of explaining these complex concepts in a way that's really easy to understand.
She offers so much hope.
Yeah, she really does. She reminds us that our bodies are incredibly resilient and that we have the power to heal ourselves.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about inflammation.
Okay.
Dr. Harper emphasizes the role of inflammation in both physical and mental health.
And she explains that inflammation is actually a natural process that's essential for healing.
So it's not always a bad thing.
No, not at all. When you get injured or sick, your body releases inflammatory chemicals that help to fight off infection and repair damaged tissue.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the problem is that sometimes inflammation can become chronic.
Chronic meaning what?
Meaning that it's ongoing and doesn't go away even when the initial threat is gone.
And what causes chronic inflammation?
Well, a lot of things can contribute to it, like stress, poor diet, lack of exercise exposure to toxins, and even genetics.
It's like a combination of factors.
Exactly. And chronic inflammation has been linked to all sorts of health problems like heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and even depression.
Wow, that's a pretty long list.
It is. And that's why it's so important to address chronic inflammation.
Now, Dr. Harper talks about something called sickness behavior. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. So sickness behavior is basically a set of symptoms that your body produces when you're sick.
Like fever and fatigue.
Exactly. And those symptoms are actually caused by inflammation.
So inflammation is what makes you feel so lousy when you're sick.
Yeah, basically. And the thing is that those same symptoms can also show up when you have chronic inflammation, even if you're not technically sick.
So you could feel like you have the flu even though you don't.
Exactly. You might feel tired, achy, and just generally run down.
And this is all because of chronic inflammation.
Yeah, and it can be really frustrating because you might go to the doctor and they can't find anything wrong with you.
So what can you do if you think you might have chronic inflammation?
Well, the first step is to talk to your doctor. They can run some tests to rule out any other medical conditions.
Okay, and then what?
Then you can start to make some lifestyle changes that can help to reduce inflammation.
Like what kind of changes?
Well, there are a lot of things you can do, like eating a healthy diet, getting regular exercise, managing stress, and getting enough sleep.
All that good stuff.
Exactly. And Dr. Harper also recommends avoiding processed foods, sugar, and alcohol.
No fun.
I know, but it's worth it if it helps to improve your health.
Okay, so we've covered the vagus nerve trauma inflammation. Now what?
Well, next we're going to talk about a really interesting condition called myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME.
Okay, I've heard of that, but I don't really know much about it.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex illness, and it's often misdiagnosed.
But Dr. Harper sheds some light on it.
She does. She explains that ME is a neuroimmune disorder, which means that it affects both the nervous system and the immune system.
And what are the symptoms?
The most common symptom is debilitating fatigue that doesn't improve with rest.
Oh, wow. So it's not just like being tired. It's like extreme exhaustion.
Exactly. And other symptoms can include muscle and joint pain, cognitive difficulties, sleep disturbances, and sensitivity to light and sound.
It sounds really debilitating.
It is, and unfortunately, there's no cure for me yet.
But there are treatments.
Yes, there are things that can help to manage the symptoms and improve quality of life.
So it's not hopeless.
Definitely not. And Dr. Harper emphasizes the importance of finding a doctor who understands ME and can provide compassionate care.
That's so important.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people with chronic illnesses feel like they're not being heard or believed by their doctors.
Absolutely. And that can be really isolating and demoralizing.
So if you're struggling with ME, it's important to advocate for yourself and find a doctor who will listen to you.
Exactly. Don't give up hope.
Now, this next topic is a bit of a downer, but it's important to talk about it. Environmental toxins.
Oh, yeah, those.
Dr. Harper reveals how pervasive these toxins are and how they can impact our health.
It's pretty scary when you think about all the chemicals we're exposed to on a daily basis.
Like in our food, our water,
Yeah.
the air we breathe, even our personal care products.
Exactly. And these toxins can accumulate in our bodies and contribute to all sorts of problems.
Like what?
Well, they've been linked to cancer, heart disease, autoimmune disorders, hormonal imbalances, and even developmental problems in children.
Yikes. That's a lot.
It is, and the thing is that we're often not even aware of all the toxins we're being exposed to.
So what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, Dr. Harper offers some great tips, like eating organic foods, filtering your water, using natural cleaning products, and being mindful of the ingredients in your personal care products.
It sounds like it takes a lot of effort.
It does, but it's worth it if it helps to protect your health.
Now, one of the most striking examples Dr. Harper uses is the story of the Inuit people in Greenland and Canada.
Oh, yeah, that one's really sad.
She explains that the Inuit have some of the highest levels of industrial waste in their bodies in the world.
And it's all because of pollution that's traveling thousands of miles from industrialized countries.
It's like these communities are paying the price for the choices that other people are making.
Exactly, and it's a real injustice.
Dr. Harper makes a really powerful point when she says that we are all interconnected.
It's true, what we do to the environment, we do to ourselves.
So it's not just about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting the planet and all the people who share it.
Absolutely. We need to start thinking about the long-term consequences of our actions.
Now, this next topic is one that I think a lot of people will be interested in: stress.
Oh yeah, stress is a big one.
Dr. Harper challenges the conventional wisdom that all stress is bad.
She does, and she explains that our beliefs about stress can actually influence how it affects us.
Wait, so you're saying that if I believe that stress is bad for me, it will be?
It could be. Studies have shown that people who view stress as a threat are more likely to experience negative health consequences.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and Dr. Harper suggests that we try to reframe stress as a challenge or an opportunity for growth.
So instead of freaking out when I'm stressed, I should try to see it as a chance to learn and grow.
Exactly, and she emphasizes that it's not about eliminating stress altogether because that's impossible.
Right, life is always going to be stressful to some degree.
Exactly, it's about learning to manage stress in a healthy way.
Now, Dr. Harper talks a lot about the importance of mindfulness and movement in managing stress.
And she explains that these practices can help to regulate our nervous system and calm our minds.
So what are some examples of mindfulness and movement practices?
Well, mindfulness can include things like meditation, yoga, and deep breathing exercises.
And movement.
Movement can include anything that gets your body moving, like walking, dancing, swimming, or playing sports.
So it doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated.
No, not at all. The important thing is to find something that you enjoy and that you can stick with.
And Dr. Harper emphasizes that these practices don't have to take up a lot of time.
Right. Even just a few minutes a day can make a big difference.
This has been such a fascinating and informative conversation. I feel like I've learned so much about the interconnectedness of our minds and bodies.
Me too. And I love how Dr. Harper presents all this information in such a relatable and empowering way.
She really does make you feel like you can take control of your health and well-being.
Absolutely. She's a great reminder that we have more power than we think we do.
Well, this is just the beginning of our deep dive into Unfuck Your Body.
That's right. We've got a lot more to explore.
So stay tuned, because in the next part, we're going to be talking about some practical techniques for reclaiming your health and well-being.
It's going to be good.
I can't wait.
Welcome back to our journey through Unfuck Your Body. Let's delve into practical techniques to reclaim your health.
I'm ready for action. What's first?
Dr. Harper introduces the PATH method for interoception. Have you heard of this?
Interoception rings a bell, but PATH is new to me.
It stands for pressure, air, tension, and heat.
An acronym. Clever.
This exercise helps you tune into your body's subtle signals, becoming more aware of what's going on inside.
So it's like a mindful body scan, paying attention to those internal sensations.
Precisely. By focusing on those 4 sensations, you'll become more sensitive to your body's responses.
How do you actually do it?
It's simple. Find a comfy spot, close your eyes, and gently direct your attention to your body.
Okay.
Ask yourself, where do I feel pressure? Where do I sense air on my skin? Any tension? Warmth?
That's it. Sounds easy enough.
The simplicity is its strength.
Right.
You don't need fancy tools, just you and your body.
Love that. Accessible to anyone.
As you practice, you can refine your sensory vocabulary, using more descriptive words like tingling or fluttering.
Like expanding our internal language.
Yes, giving a voice to those sensations often ignored.
Speaking of powerful tools, what about breathwork? Dr. Harper seems to be a big advocate.
Breathwork is incredibly potent, especially for those who have experienced trauma.
Why is that?
Because it directly impacts our nervous system. By consciously controlling our breath, we can regulate our stress response.
So we can shift out of that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Exactly. It's like hitting the reset button on your nervous system.
Bringing back that sense of safety and calm.
Deep, slow breaths stimulate the vagus nerve, sending a signal to your brain that it's okay to relax.
It all comes full circle. Vagus nerve, trauma, breathwork, it's all connected.
Absolutely. And the beauty is that consistent practice retrains your nervous system to handle stress more effectively.
So we're actually rewiring our brains through the power of breath. Amazing.
Any specific techniques come to mind from the book?
There were a few. Box breathing definitely stood out.
A classic, and for good reason. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold, all for a count of 4.
Like the Navy SEALs used to stay composed under pressure.
Right. It works wonders whether you're facing a high-stakes situation or just need to unwind.
And for those who prefer something gentler, there's diaphragmatic breathing.
Also known as belly breathing, taking deep breaths into your abdomen.
That feels so natural and relaxing.
It activates the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for that sense of peace and calm.
Adding both to my toolkit for sure. Anything else that resonated with you?
Alternate nostril breathing, definitely worth exploring.
Well, I've tried that one. It's incredibly calming and centering.
It's believed to balance energy channels in the body, leading to mental clarity and emotional stability.
A perfect way to de-stress and find inner peace.
Now let's talk about another essential element, food.
A topic often fraught with confusion and conflicting information.
Dr. Harper doesn't shy away from the complexities. She challenges the myth that thinness equals health.
And rightfully so. It's a harmful and often discriminatory standard.
She exposes the inherent biases within diet culture and how it perpetuates unrealistic ideals.
Her critique of the BMI was particularly eye-opening.
It's often presented as a definitive measure of health, but it's incredibly flawed.
It doesn't consider body composition, genetics, or individual variations.
Exactly. Focusing solely on weight can distract us from addressing underlying issues.
Like chronic inflammation, nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances.
It's about nourishing our bodies with whole, nutrient-dense foods.
Food that truly supports our well-being rather than obsessing over numbers on a scale.
And we need to be mindful of how our food is produced.
Right. The industrial food system with its pesticides, antibiotics, and GMOs has a ripple effect.
It's crucial to understand how these practices impact our health and the environment.
Speaking of which, Dr. Harper delves into the alarming use of antibiotics in animal agriculture.
It's a major concern, contributing to antibiotic resistance and disrupting our gut microbiome.
Which is so crucial for immune function and overall health.
It's a wake-up call to be more conscious consumers.
Absolutely. Making informed choices about our food sources is essential.
Dr. Harper also sheds light on food sensitivities and how they can trigger inflammation.
Gluten and dairy are common culprits, but sensitivities are highly individualized.
She encourages listening to your body and noticing how different foods make you feel.
Keeping a food journal can be helpful for identifying those triggers.
It's all about cultivating that self-awareness and finding what works best for you.
Okay, so we've covered mindfulness, breathwork, mindful eating. What other strategies does Dr. Harper recommend?
There's so much more to explore. Unfuck Your Body is a treasure trove of wisdom. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into Unfuck Your Body.
I'm ready to uncover more of Dr. Harper's wisdom.
We've covered the vagus nerve trauma, mindful eating.
We learned so much about the connection between our physical and emotional well-being.
Now let's explore a fascinating concept, energetic discharge.
Energetic discharge, what's that all about?
It's the idea of releasing emotional tension through movement.
You mean like our emotions can get stuck in our bodies?
Exactly. When you experience strong emotions like anger or anxiety, notice how your body reacts.
My heart races. My muscles tense up. Sometimes I even feel like I can't breathe.
That's your body responding to the surge of energy those emotions create.
And if we don't release that energy,
It can manifest as chronic tension, pain, and even difficulty regulating emotions.
so movement provides an outlet for that pent-up energy to escape.
Precisely. And it doesn't have to be strenuous. Even gentle movements like stretching or yoga can make a difference.
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes a good walk or dance session helps me shake off a bad mood.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of energetic discharge in action.
Dr. Harper also emphasizes the importance of interoception in this process.
Interoception being the awareness of our internal bodily sensations.
Right, so we can use it to pinpoint where we're holding tension.
Exactly. And once we've identified those areas, we can use movement to gently release them.
Like giving our bodies permission to let go of what no longer serves us.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Now, shifting gears slightly, let's touch upon meditation and its relationship to the vagus nerve.
I'm intrigued. Meditation seems to have so many benefits.
It really does. And one of those benefits is its ability to stimulate the vagus nerve, promoting relaxation and reducing stress.
So by calming our minds, we're positively impacting our physical state as well.
Precisely. It's another testament to the mind-body connection. Dr. Harper mentions several types of meditation: mindfulness, mantra, and metta.
Could you break those down for us? I'm curious to explore different approaches.
Mindfulness meditation focuses on observing your breath sensations and thoughts without judgment.
Sounds like a practice in simply being present without getting carried away by our thoughts.
Exactly. Mantra meditation involves repeating a specific word or sound to quiet the mind.
I've heard that can be helpful for managing anxiety.
The repetition creates an anchor for your attention, fostering inner peace.
And what about metta meditation?
Metta, or loving kindness meditation, cultivates compassion and goodwill.
Interesting. So you direct positive energy towards yourself and others?
Exactly. It's a powerful practice for dissolving self-criticism and fostering connection.
Dr. Harper emphasizes that there's no right way to meditate.
It's about finding what resonates with you and supports your unique needs.
Now, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear about cognitive diffusion.
A valuable tool for navigating our information-saturated world.
It sounds intriguing. What is it exactly?
It's a technique used in acceptance and commitment therapy to help us detach from our thoughts.
So instead of getting caught up in our thoughts, we learn to observe them without judgment.
Precisely. We recognize that thoughts are not facts, but simply mental events.
It's like taking a step back and realizing we have a choice in how we respond.
Exactly. Cognitive diffusion empowers us to break free from unhelpful thought patterns.
Especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information and stressors.
Dr. Harper provides some great tips for practicing cognitive diffusion.
Like labeling thoughts as just thoughts or visualizing them floating by like clouds.
These techniques create space between us and our thoughts, giving us more control over our reactions.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. I feel equipped with so many practical tools.
Dr. Harper has a gift for making complex concepts accessible and empowering.
She truly emphasizes the wisdom and resilience within our own bodies.
By listening to our bodies, honoring our needs, and incorporating these strategies, we can unlock a healthier and more fulfilling life.
Healing is a process, and Unfuck Your Body serves as a valuable guide along the way.
As we conclude, let's recap those key takeaways.
10 points to empower our listeners.
Starting with the vagus nerve, a powerful communication pathway between the brain and body.
Next, recognizing that trauma leaves lasting impacts on both our minds and bodies.
Becoming aware of the freeze response and its subtle yet powerful effects.
Understanding the long-term consequences of adverse childhood experiences.
Recognizing how trauma manifests through arousal avoidance and intrusion.
Addressing chronic inflammation as a root cause of various health issues.
Raising awareness about myalgic encephalomyelitis and advocating for those who suffer from it.
Minimizing our exposure to environmental toxins and making conscious choices.
Challenging our beliefs about stress and reframing it as an opportunity for growth.
And finally, embracing mindfulness and movement practices to regulate our nervous system and promote healing.
There you have it. 10 key takeaways to empower you on your journey to unfuck your body.
Thank you for joining us on this enlightening deep dive into Unfuck Your Body.
Remember, you hold the power to heal and create a life filled with well-being and vitality.